everybody, and welcome back to another Toonkind at 12 FPS. My name is Avi, and today I will be playing sort of a new character, I guess you could say. I am playing Tom Symms, the Archivist. And with me today is my wonderful, dear friend who I adore so very much.
Hello, everyone. I am Cartoon Kitsune, and today I will be playing my very normal, very unassuming, definitely not at all evil boy, Norman Plume.
Totally normal. Very, very normal.
Yeah,
The most normal, in fact.
yeah. Well, there's one, I guess, like notable thing about him. It's that he's a bit of a writer. Yeah, dabbles in that, and specifically his genre of choice is horror. So, after a certain incident at where he got stuck in a church for a night during a storm. Uh, let's just say I should probably preface this again with there's spoilers for the game Monster of the Mind, which Avi ran a little while ago, which was a very good game. You all should definitely go listen to it right now.
Oh,
Well,
thank
not right now,
you.
but after this game.
Just open it in another tab, it's fine.
Just have the two going on simultaneously. It'll be fine.
Definitely not an auditory nightmare.
Speaking of nightmares,
Yeah, Norman, you're,
yeah,
not only did you spend that little bit of time in the people's temple of the inspired gods, you, also got a little bit of inspiration for, one of your novels.
yeah. And so I think here's what happened after that whole incident, and probably after he went to sort of debrief the situation with his patron, who wasn't too happy with him, but he managed to mostly smooth it over. Don't worry about that part. Anyway, he went back to the inn he's staying at, and like sat down to kind of jot down some notes about that whole experience, get some story ideas, and I think he was probably about halfway through the process when he realized, wait a minute, this monster manifests like the more people think about it, and if I write this down and like eventually publish this, then more of those monsters might start to manifest. So that idea kind of had to go into the trash.
Whoopsie doopsie. Very,
Yep.
very unfortunate that you cannot make
Yeah.
a horror story out of this experience.
Yeah, my poor boy's terrible, no, oh good, horrible, very bad day just continues and continues.
It's been longer than a day.
Yeah. Uh, So yeah, after definitely moping about that for a little bit, he realized, hey, maybe this whole thing won't be a complete wash, because there were a couple people there who apparently had experience with like encountering like lots of different monsters. One of them he definitely cannot talk to because he's very much been told to avoid that person, a certain monster hunter. But the other one, who seems like quite a bit safer, was some nerd with a tape recorder and a weird skin condition, let's call it.
Very strange pockmarked scars, I guess you could call them, all over his face and arms. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, so Norman figures, hey, maybe I can just like if that guy has like a whole bunch of records of like, monsters that like people have encountered, maybe he can get a little inspiration from that instead.
yeah, you did get an address to this guy's archival office. As far as you can tell, it is an archival office in. I have not decided where, but I think I'm gonna put it in Gisnep.
Makes sense.
Uh,
So probably has to take a teleportation station there. I
yeah.
don't know where specifically Norman's currently situated. Probably somewhere in UPA, but either way, teleportation stations are a thing. So
Mm-hmm. Um, to elaborate a bit further on what it is exactly that this nerd with an odd skin condition does, um, during the game, he said that he and his husband are quote unquote paranormal investigators.
hmm
They go around investigating paranormal situations, and supposedly for some reason, that requires bringing around a tape recorder, which, Norman, you were there for the one time it did happen. For one of the times it happened in the game, apparently it goes off and starts recording on its own. And
Yeah. Which is kind of weird, but hey, maybe it's just faulty. Who knows?
who knows?
Yeah, so I say we can probably start things off with Norman having followed the address and is outside the institute. If you want to describe what this place looks like, or
Um, it is a very gothic looking building. I can give you that. Um,
Mhm.
very, it's actually a newly built building, despite the gothic styled architecture that draws inspiration from Albinon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, you got it.
Excuse me. Um, very despite the very cheerful atmosphere of Gisnep, the building itself is very dark and kind of dreary.
Yeah, that sounds like something from Albion, all right.
Yeah. Um, it gives the impression of being a place of supernatural activity itself.
Well, that might intimidate most people, but for Norman, that's good news because that's exactly what he's looking for.
Yeah. Um, but there is a little sign, a little bit in front of the front doors, um, that says, that proclaims the name of the institute, which I have not gotten around to naming, but
Yeah, we'll just put a pin in that for later.
but judging by the sign, it is an archival office as well as like a place of research.
Mm, interesting.
Mm-hmm. As you approach the front doors, though, can you roll me a perception?
I would be happy to. That's an 8.
All right. Well, you probably don't pick up on the more subtle detail then, but what is glaringly obvious, the the doors are it's double set doors, very big, very imposing, or it would be if you were that kind of person. Um, but it does have a pretty large knocker, and you realize that the shape of the knocker is that of a uh ooh, words, is that of a spider hanging from a web.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he'll like grab the knocker and knock on it a couple times.
Yeah. There is a brief moment uh, before you hear a bit of like shuffling and a muffled voice from behind the door before it finally opens, and standing in front of you, you might have to look down a little bit, is
Yeah.
a familiar halfling that you met at
Yeah.
the People's Temple.
Real quick, when he was there, did Martin mention like what his last name would be, or because I mean, if he didn't, then Norman would assume it's also Sims because like his husband. But just because like Norman's polite, so he'd probably call him Mister Last Name instead of his first name.
Yeah.
So
His last name would be Fleetfoot. Very fitting
But
for a halfling.
yeah. Hello, Mr. Fleetfoot. Good to see you again.
Oh yes, Mr. Plume, was it? And he's gonna hold out a hand for
That
you to shake.
he'll shake it just to be polite.
I've So sorry, we weren't expecting any visitors. Most of the office is out on investigative duties. Is there something you needed?
Yes, sorry, to intrude, but I was hoping to speak to your husband, Mr. Sims, if he's available.
Uh, yes, he's currently busy, and you hear him, you see him, like, look down back into the building. Do you want to roll a hearing perception?
Alrighty. Come on, buddy. A 9.
Okay. I think with a 9, it would make sense because the the how do you say, it is a very
Hmm.
gothic building, and in that same vein, it would make sense that any noise that comes that passes through the halls is very echoey and a little distorted because of that.
Right, so hard to get kind of a clear listen, so to
Yeah,
speak.
it you think it might be the sound of someone talking.
Hmm.
You cannot make out what they are saying.
Right, well, I can always wait until he's available or come back tomorrow.
Uh,
Whatever be most
oh,
convenient for you.
no. It should only take a few minutes. Why don't you come inside? I can make you some tea if you'd like.
Oh, well, if you're offering, that'd be very kind of you. And he'll head inside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he gestures for you to follow into the building, and it is,
Hmm.
how should I put it? The
Hmm.
inside of this building feels more like some sort of castle than it does an office.
Ooh.
um, it was a bit harder to make out, given Gisnep art style plus uh, scene transition. We'll just slap that tag right there. Um,
Yeah.
but you have, as you enter into the foyer, you realize that the way the room kind of curves around, this building is round.
Hmm.
And you realize that there are staircases leading up and leading down. Uh,
Hmm.
there is as you look down the staircase that leads down, um, you see that the it leads into a doorway that is labeled as artifact storage.
Hmm. Interesting.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But um, Marvin um, takes you off to the side, down out of the foyer and into what is a kind of conspicuous break room, all things considered.
Hmm.
It's very comfortable and very cozy, and you notice that there are a lot of notes that have been written and pinned onto a little corkboard on the wall, um,
Hmm.
above one of these sinks.
Important question, is there a Pepe Sylvia on there?
Yes.
Nice. Figure
uh,
just gonna come standard with any like Toonish corkboard at this
yeah.
point.
You have the feeling that it was written as part of a joke.
Yeah.
Someone pulling a prank on someone else, something like that. But you do notice that,
Nice.
I will give you this. A lot of the notes are written in several different handwritings, uh,
Hmm.
which seems to give the indication of, you know, multiple people working at this office.
Right, right.
Um, but Marvin goes about the break room, getting a cup of tea, and as he does this, he's like, "Oh, what kind of tea would you like? How would you like to take it? All that fun stuff."
I think he probably, much like his sister, I think he probably enjoys chamomile. It's relaxing.
All right, yeah, I am going to do something in the background as I, for some reason, forgot to open Marvin's sheet. Oh wow, it is damn good fucking tea.
Dang, nice.
For the audience, that's a modified 29.
I mean, it feels in character, so.
Yeah, there's like a little step stool that he uses to like get around all the counters and whatnot.
Mhm.
And you are given a cup of tea, and it smells amazing. And
Yeah.
Marvin just goes, "I'll be right back, and I'll go check on him. All right."
Of course. Take your time.
And as he heads out, I am willing to let you roll another hearing perception.
All right. This one goes badly. I'm going to switch dice spots because I know this one, especially in the last game, was bullying him quite a bit. So let's see here. Yeah, no, switching dice. One is just not working out because it's like third time in a row, man.
Yikes. Man cannot roll above a 10!
Good God. So, if you're willing to take the 9, I mean, it's not much better than the 6, but
Yeah.
his ass is not paying attention. Which makes sense, because, like, honestly, if he's waiting, he's probably just, like, taking out his notebook and, like, jotting down details of this place. Because, you know, spooky archival office, like, that has some potential for, like, a setting.
He hoo. Hoo hoo he he hoo. Hmm.
Actually, you know what? He does have his one of his features. I always forget the name. Dark One's Own Luck. If you permit me to add a D10 to that.
Yeah, go right ahead. Just because.
All right.
This is an FPS. You've been bullied way too much already.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was a 10 on a D20 or
that-
D10. I mean, so that's 19 total. Much better.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Let me figure out where to start. Okay. So this office is pretty round, and not office. This building is pretty round, and you realized that ooh, excuse me. That the foyer had what would normally be like a secretary desk, that currently is not filled, and there was nobody there when you came inside, but the noise you've been hearing, that like voice you've been hearing, it is a single person who is talking. In fact, it sounds a little bit like a monologue. It sounds like they've been going on for a little while, until you hear the voice stop, and there is a brief extended pause, and then a click of a tape recorder.
Interesting.
And it's been a few minutes because Marvin had to brew your tea, make sure it's steeped and everything.
I think Norman's probably been sipping on that as he's been waiting.
Mm-hmm. And then a little bit after that, peeking in through the doorway of the break room is Tom Symms. And
Oh, Mr. Sims, there you are.
right, Mr. Plume, right? Um,
Hmm.
a bit of a surprise to see you here.
Yes, well, I wanted to follow up on that address. I have need of your assistance with something, or rather, assistance of the office here. If you have time to speak with me, that is.
Oh, certainly. Why don't we? Hmm. What exactly is it you need?
Well, I'll get straight to the point. And he'll take out his notebook. Well, his notebook's already out. Actually, he'll kind of close the cover of it and like just kind of set it on the table. I'm a writer, specifically of the horror variety, and I like to take inspiration from some of the things I've witnessed in my travels. I had intended to take a bit of inspiration from the incident at the church, but well, I was about halfway through my rough draft when I realized that writing about that creature would be rather dangerous.
Right, we don't
For
want a
yeah,
repeat situation.
right. Fortunately, that left me tossing out a perfectly good idea, but then I recalled that you mentioned that your archive here has several accounts of what's the word? Of encounters people have had with various monsters. So I was hoping if you would permit me to perhaps look through your archives and see if there's any what's the word? Any of those God, what would be the word for it? It's not archives, it's uh like the individual like stories, but I'm
Statements.
blanking on the word. Statements, yeah. One of those statements.
Oh,
I don't know if you're permitted to share any of that with the public or not, but well, I figured no harm in asking, right?
you see him kind of think for a moment, kind of watching you. Um,
Mhm.
he's going to Let's do. Yeah, let's roll insight. Uh,
Yeah.
just to see. Hang on, let me double check something with your features. Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything that gives him a bonus on insight, but that's fine. Let's do.
Yeah.
Yes. He's gonna redo that roll real quick. That was a nat fucking 20.
Oh my God.
Um, he.
Yeah, so I'd say with that, like, yeah, you can definitely tell, like, he seems to be telling the truth about, like, his intentions for being here. It's like, at the very least, that's definitely, like, the main reason he'd, want this information. So he's telling the truth on that. I mean, there might be a slight ulterior motive, because, I mean, he is allied with, like, a group of, people who, you know, capture and trade monsters. So, selling
Mm,
that information to them could be useful. But legitimately, he's, of course, Tom wouldn't know that, but legitimately, his main reason for coming here is just inspiration for his writing.
uh, well, I see no harm in it, but I have to request that. There is quite a bit of personal information here in the archives, especially with certain statements. Uh, I have to request that whatever novel you write does not use such personal information. Um, and he gives you that bit of disclaimer. Um,
And and he nods and says, "Ah, yes, of course. I wouldn't want to mention any actual people, if only for the legality of doing so. But I typically when I do involve like sorry, uh, usually when I do use inspiration from personal anecdotes such as this, I tend to change the names, or on occasion, I don't even bother giving the characters names. I'm not quite as fond of the writing the first person perspective, but for certain stories, it works a bit better to get the reader more into the mindset of the character, so to speak.
He kind of nods and he goes, well, I can take you upstairs to the archives very quickly. You can bring your tea if you're not finished with it.
That's all right. I'm mostly finished with it anyway. He'll, to be polite, he'll probably like pour out what little is left in the sink and throw out the tea bag, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he'll collect his notebook and put it back into his bag.
Okay. Tom kind of nods and he will gesture for you to follow him up the stairs and into the archives. I'm trying to figure out how to put it into words because I have a mental image and it's going to be difficult translating that mental image into words. The upstairs.
All right, take your time.
Yeah, the upstairs is not just the archives. You do notice that there are a few like offshoot offices. Presumably where people who work here do their own like solo work, but the entrance to the archives itself is another room that is blocked off with double set doors. And do you want to roll a quick perception on this set of doors?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Finally, a decent roll. That's a 15.
15. Okay. See if I can figure out how to put it into words. The rather than having knockers on this set of doors, it is more iron handles, but kind of engraved into the wooden doors, very, very subtle, to the point where it kind of makes sense that you missed it on the first set of doors. Spreading across both sides is the engraving of an eye staring directly outward.
Ooh.
And Tom takes one of the handles and just opens it.
Yeah. He kind of mutters under his breath, sensing a bit of a motif with you. Nothing, just, yeah. He'll just head in without another word.
Kind of raises a brow, but, he kind of gestures for you to go inside. It is, this place is so organized. It is so large and so, like, full of shelves and whatnot. It would be a lot easier to call this place a library. There is so much information here. All the shelves are aligned in rows that, again, follow a shape that is kind of circular. And following off your 15 perception, I'm just going to carry that over, simply because it doesn't make sense for you to roll again.
Yeah.
I think the number is 13. I need to double check. I think it's 14, actually.
Yeah.
No, okay. No, I can still roll off of the 14. The room is circular. It would be more
Mhm.
accurate to say that the room gives the impression of being circular. There are still like flat walls, um, and you notice that each of the walls, it is 14 walls that are lined up to like surround each other, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. And each one has a different sort of mark. But the ceiling, which is domed, again has that insignia of an eye looking down over everything.
Mhm.
Um, and Tom kind of just leads you further into the center of the room, which you realize is the least organized point of this room, namely because you notice that there are a lot of boxes of statements that have yet to be organized. Um, there are also several tables and chairs. There is a chalkboard, um, which is listing out um, 15 different, I guess you could say, titles. Um, and this chalkboard also has notes and whatnot, either pinned or magnetized or like a sticky note on it. One of which you realize is a note from Marvin telling Tom that his dinner is ready.
Aw.
Um, and as he brings you further into this area, he says, "You'll have to excuse the mess. We did just recently move into Inkwell, so not everything has been properly placed."
Hmm. Well, that's quite all right. I mean, the rest of this is seems quite well organized.
Quite a few books as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little curious. Is there any particular reason the building is circular, or was it just happened to be built that way before you moved the archives in here?
You see him kind of glance upwards towards the dome ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he says, well, the building itself takes inspiration from a well-known architect from Albanon, who's no longer alive, of course, but he primarily advocated a sense of balance, um, a sense of symmetry in his work, which the circle helps provide a bit of.
Mm-hmm. Take it he was also a fan of eye motifs as well.
And he kind of chuckles and he says, "You could say that."
Kind of smiles a little bit.
Um, the archives are open to anybody who has a statement to give, of course. Um, if you do find yourself, hang on, I have to figure out how he phrases this.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, a person as well traveled as you would also have something of note to share.
Right, of course, it would be rather unfair of me to ask you for information and not give you anything in return. I did have something in mind, and I think I'll reach into his bag. And this time he pulls out a copy of a book. Not a notebook this time, but a proper book. It's the cover's blue, and it has a little crescent moon's emblem on it. And the title on the front reads "A Boy's Midnight Journey." This is currently my only published work. I'm my first one I ever did, but I'm rather proud of it. I know it's not quite what you keep here in the archives, but at the very least, it might count for something.
We can always give it a try. And you see him kind of move over to the table, and you realize that there are a lot of tape recorders and cassettes that have been laid out on the table. They also look like they're in the process of being organized. But Tom um, picks up a an empty tape recorder and a blank cassette and puts it in, and he says, "Of course, being as we are a an office that investigates paranormal activities, if there is something that we come across that might align with your story, we will be reaching out to you."
Of course, though I will say that the rumor I heard that I based the story around, it's well from a different country, all the way over in Faruma, so possibly somewhat outside your area if you mostly operate out of Inkwell. Just a fair warning on that.
Well, you can never be too sure. And he kind of gestures for you to take a seat.
You will take a seat and open up the book.
And
Well, if you prefer to have it in recorded format, then I don't mind reading it out, if that will suffice.
that would be actually be much preferred. For one reason or the other, the cassettes have been rather the most reliable in terms
Mhm.
of how you say containing statements. And
All
he's
right.
gonna sit down across from you, and whenever you're ready, he'll hit the record button when you tell him to.
All right. Yeah, he's got open to the first page, and he seems to be ready when Tom is.
Okay. There is a soft little click as the recording begins, and Tom starts off by saying, "Statement of Norman Plume regarding a boy's midnight journey. A statement given directly from subject on December 4th, 2024. Recording by Thomas Symms, the archivist. Statement begins." And he gestures for you to start talking.
And he will begin reading. Certain boy was known to have a problematic condition, one that would only affect him at night, one that even the best doctors could not explain. Thought to be the work of the devil by many, it was said that the boy would wake up during the night and speak to the ones who had perished. Despite various attempts to cure him of his curse, the boy kept on being disturbed by strange voices during the night. Some would wail and moan, eternally lamenting their sorry state. Some would taunt and torment him, their mocking voices insisting that he was doomed to meet a terrible end, that his fate had been sealed the moment he had been born. A scant few whispered warnings and fearful pleads, but he could never fully understand what they are trying to tell him. At first their voices terrified him, and his quaking, fearful heart denied him many nights of sleep. They rang in his ears like church bells, cacophonous and nearly deafening at times, never granting him even a moment's rest. It was enough to drive some men mad, and yet somehow it never quite tipped him over the edge of sanity. As time went on, however, their constant presence became so familiar that it was almost comforting to him in an odd way. They would always be there to surround him each night, no matter what. Even when those that were alive grew more distant from him, he was never truly alone. It was only after his mother's voice joined their unearthly chorus that he truly began to listen to what they had to say. They told him their stories, how each of them came to be the lingering spirits that they now were. Some spoke of following their heart's desire, only to be met with death and ruin. Others told him tales of betrayal from those closest to him, being gruesomely sacrificed against their will so their loved ones could obtain that which they desired above all else. But for all the similarities their stories seemed to share, each one was unique in its own way, and soon he became so enthralled by them that he simply had to keep a record of them. He began writing down the stories they had told him in a notebook, one that he was supposed to be using for his studies. At first he simply copied them down word for word, but over time he started adding little flourishes, tweaking them so they would have a better narrative flow to them. It became his escape from the drudgery of each passing day, from his endless studying of subjects he had no interest in, from the stress of social events he was forced to attend. Finally, he had found something he was passionate about, something that brought him joy once again. He was a writer, and if he could spend all the rest of his days penning these kinds of stories, then he would be content. But, like all good things in the boy's life, eventually this had to come to an end as well. One night, he was called to his father's study and made to stand in front of his desk. His father opened a desk drawer, pulled something out, and placed it atop the desk for him to see. Just as he'd feared, it was the very notebook he had been writing all of his stories in. His father scolded him for wasting his time on these mindless distractions, and he lectured him on how important it was that he make something of himself, and how vital it was that he do well in his studies in order to achieve those lofty goals. The boy had heard it all before, and his father's words failed to breach the apathy he feels not only towards studying, but toward his life in general. It was the point of caring when he was little more than a pawn to be used to uphold their family's crumbling reputation. His father could tell that he was not getting through to him, which meant more drastic measures needed to be taken. He stood up from his desk with the journal in hand and walked over to the fireplace on the other side of the room. Methodically, he tore the pages out of the notebook one by one, crumpled them up, and threw them into the fire. The boy did nothing to stop him, didn't move as he watched his precious stories burn to ashes. He knew he couldn't stop this. Trying to grab the notebook would only give his father cause to retaliate, and he didn't want any more bruises. He knows he's powerless to stop this, just like everything else in this life. When he was finished, his father handed him what was left of the notebook and its remaining empty pages. And then he said, and Norman kind of pauses and hesitates for a moment, sort of breaking the flow of the reading he's been doing. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle because Tom can't really see the page from here. But the way his eyes are sort of darting, it kind of looks like he's like rereading a line to make sure he's seeing it right. But he quickly falls back into the flow, almost like something's compelling him to keep reading. And the next line he says is kind of interesting, because at the end of the first sentence, and that it sounds like a name, but as hard as you try, you can't understand what the name is. You hear it clearly, but when you try to think of what was just said, it sort of slips your mind, like it just doesn't stick. It's very odd in that way. But continuing the statement. And then he said, "This is for your own good, blank. I won't have you disappointing me like your sister. You're the only one who can carry on our family's legacy now, and you will take this seriously. Are we clear?" He nodded numbly at his father, but only to placate him. He understood completely, but not the lesson his father had been trying to impart. He understood that he could no longer thrive in this household. There's nothing left for him here. If he can't even have the one small thing that brought him contentment, then he'd rather be anywhere but here. He'd rather be anyone but himself. And so that very night, late into the evening, when all the world was asleep, he climbed out of his bedroom window and followed the voices of the dead, wherever they chose to take him. If he no longer had a place among the living, then he would let them lead him to where he could find his heart's desire, as each one of them had. Even if it meant he would join their ranks one day, his mind had been made up and nothing else mattered to him anymore. The journey took him to the woods on the outskirts of the grounds where his house was situated, where a tall and imposing forest stood. His mother had always warned them not to go into it when they were children, and even now he could hear her whispered warnings at the edge of his hearing. But she was quickly drowned out by the countless other voices that urged him onward. As he wandered deeper and deeper into the woods, the colors began to shift. The muted browns and greens, hidden by the darkness, became vibrant and colorful, to the point where they were unnatural and oversaturated. He wondered if perhaps he had found his way into the Feywilds, recalling the stories of it he had heard in his youth. But that didn't seem right, if only because the bright colors did little to permeate the all-encompassing darkness that surrounded him. Further and further he walked into the unknown. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed looming figures peering at him from the shadows. Their sharp teeth glinted in the moonlight. They seemed hungry. He moved a little faster, paying them no heed as he focused on his destination. Finally, after what feels like hours, he arrived at the clearing. Flickering candles floated around him in midair, illuminating the space with a dim light. In front of him, there was a figure draped in shadows and seated upon a gleaming golden throne. He smiled at the boy, his sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. "I thought you'd never reach out to me, my boy. I can give you what you want. All I need is your name." From that day on, the boy was never seen or heard from again. Some believed he had jumped from his window to his death, but no one ever found a body. Others suspect he simply ran away from his home to escape the pressure his father's expectations had put him under. Still, others wondered if he, too, had been locked away in an asylum to hide him away from the world and prevent him from bringing their family any further shame. No one around him will ever know the secret of his. Such a privilege only belongs to me, my dear.
Can you make me a wisdom saving throw?
I would be happy to. Let's see, save. Uh, 16.
That does not make it.
Ooh.
Let me figure out how to describe this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, wait, let me double check to make sure that's right. No, that should be. Yeah, the DC is 16, so you should beat it. Unless you want to fail.
And meets it beats it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm kind of curious what the effect is, so.
Okay. Well, if you're curious.
Mm-hmm.
Norman. During when you first started giving, this statement, when you started reading it out loud, it was very much like your own, how you say, your own will. You were giving it, willingly. But there was a point, and you might have noticed when, where that seems to have changed. Less that you were giving a statement and reading it out loud, and more like the words were being pulled out of you. And suddenly you can't put your finger on why or where from. You are suddenly pressed with this feeling that you are being watched from all sides. That there is something watching you, and it is knowing you, and it knows what you've done, and you're not even sure if you have anything that you can keep secret anymore, because this feeling of being known is so overwhelming. The more you keep talking, and you can't even stop. You can't stop in the middle of the story that you're telling. You have no choice but to keep going. And is Tom Symms even human? He must be. He looked human when you first got in here, when you first started reading, but the moment you finish giving your statement, it seems to go away. There is no overwhelming feeling of being watched, of being known, and that strange trick of the light, something in the corner of your eye that made Tom seem less human, it's not there anymore. In fact, Tom seems as normal as he always had been. And he, once you finish, he clicks the recording off, and you feel as though you can breathe again.
Yeah, and I think I'm not even gonna roll deception for that because yeah, that would yeah, Norman's pretty freaked out by that. He's definitely like kind of like takes a gasp of air in and like has to take a few deep breaths.
Are you alright?
What was that? What was that? What did you do to me?
What are you talking about?
That wasn't normal. That was what did you do to me?
I didn't do anything. He kind of looks at you confused and concerned. Before, are you sure are you alright? Do you need a glass of water, or?
And I think at this point, I'm gonna let him roll deception. Oh my God, nat one. Holy cow.
I can roll a quick little insight.
Please do. I mean, it's still a 13 because his modifier is disgusting, but
Yeah, okay. That is a modified 20.
yeah, no, he definitely can pick up that like.
I dropped
And
my
Norman's
dice.
like, oh no.
I found it. We're good.
Yeah, I think Norman probably he tries to put up his usual facade, puts a fake smile on his face, that sort of thing, but it does nothing, Tom. You can tell that like, he's very rattled by whatever just happened to him. I think still trying to catch his breath a little, he says, pardon me, it was probably nothing, just a trick of the light or something. My apologies.
Do you want to roll a quick insight?
I would love to. That's a 12.
Okay. How should I put this? Tom seems very attentive to you right now. But like he is genuinely concerned for your well-being. And he kind of watches you for a quick second. And you have a feeling he's probably like trying to like think of like something that could have happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Before he
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you know,
More importantly, with that insight, is Norman able to tell, like, is he being truthful about, like, not knowing what just happened?
it's how should I put it? Well, how should I put it? Um, you kind of accused him of doing something. He
Mm-hmm.
genuinely believes he didn't do anything. Um, but with a 12, I think you should just get the impression that he's just okay, something probably did happen here. I should probably excuse myself to give this guy some space.
Yeah.
Which Tom does.
Yeah.
And uh he kind of stands up from where he was. He takes the tape recorder with him. And he does give me one moment. I'm gonna get you a glass of water. You're free to look
Mm-hmm.
around if you'd like. And
All
then
right.
he gets up and leaves the archives.
Yeah. Uh, Honestly, I think like once he leaves and like once Norman hears like the footsteps like get far enough away, he's just handing me like just punching the desk with his hand and just hissing like, "God damn it!"
Ooh, you want to investigate this place so bad because something fucked up is going on. Ooh.
Yeah, no. Once he gets that out of his system, he's like, take this moment to like search as quickly as he can.
Okay. Either perception or investigation.
Let's see which one's better. Perception's actually better, so I'll do that one. Ooh,
Ooh.
19. Yeah. I know he was originally looking for like, statements that like could be useful as writing, but I think at this point he's probably looking for more stuff with that eye motif.
Well, you're in luck.
Hmm.
Cause that chalkboard, um, I introduced earlier, the one that had several you assume titles with a bunch of notes and sticky pads and whatnot uh, placed onto it. You start to read over them.
Hmm.
Uh, and you realize that they are actually arranged in a very familiar circular pattern.
Hmm. Just like the ones on the dome.
Yeah, give me a second to. Well, that's not it. Hang on. As I scroll back up. There we go. Yep. Okay. You notice that each of these titles are arranged in a circular pattern, though there is not an even amount of them. Uh, you have 15 total, and each one is designated with a symbol that is that correlates. You realize to a symbol along the dome. So you have 14 of them, and then a 15th in the middle of everything. The title that is in the middle of this circle is called The Eye.
Bit on the nose there, or should we say a bit on the eye?
A bullseye, if you would. Sorry.
A
Uh, do you want to read the entire board, or do you just want to look at the notes on the eye specifically?
He's mostly interested on the eye because, again, he wants to know what the hell that thing was.
Okay. So one of the sticky notes um, is written here is a list of alternative titles. One of which is beholding. Um, beholding the ceaseless watcher, or in quotations, it knows me.
Ooh.
And another note off to the side is a list of, I guess you could say, fears. Uh, the fear of being watched, of being judged, of being exposed, um, of having your secrets exposed, or privacy destroyed. Um, the fear um, of knowledge and seeking new information, especially like information that could be dangerous.
Hmm.
Suddenly starting to make sense why this place is an archive.
Yeah. Collecting all that information.
Um, there is another note. Um, the it's just it says something along the lines of associated with the unending desire to know, that you
Hmm.
must know even if it ruins you. Um, the there is another note put down that says no known sorry, that's not it. There have only been two recorded avatars of the eye. Um, However, one is currently deceased, and there is a date uh, underneath that sentence. Um, the other's transformation was forced and unwilling.
Now, here's something I'd like to confirm because I'm pretty sure Norman was around for this during the game. So I know at one point Tom showed off his eyes all over his body
Yeah, he
because I'm pretty
was.
sure Norman was, yeah. So Norman did see that.
I'm not sure if Norman rolled high enough to see it. I can't remember. I can
Yeah, I
definitely
think
try and
because he was
pull it
getting
up.
pretty bad rolls. I think that's one of the ones he failed. So
I can double check real quick.
yeah.
Where's the picture? I remember this because someone in the audience went, I see. And then I went, yeah, so does Tom. Yeah, he got an 11 for that.
And that was enough to see the eyes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, actually. Actually, I think you caught it the first time the extra eyes appeared, which was when he was startled.
That's right. Yeah, because I had a feeling he noticed it at some point.
Yeah.
So
You didn't see all of them, but you did see that some of the scars that were on his face looked to be extra eyes for a brief moment or two before they all kind of closed.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think with that, he's definitely connecting a few wires. I did want to ask if he could roll a history, um, because I'm pretty sure the princess definitely told him about like people to watch out for, and he might have like informed him of like certain like deities or other like powerful patrons you might want to watch out for. So can you roll a history?
Yes, roll a history.
Let me get the right dice spot. Ah, 19.
Ooh. Um.
Hmm.
Well, here's the interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
The with a 19 on history and a 19 on the perception, which you were looking over the board, um, you realize that a lot of the things associated with the title of the eye is related to fears.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of irrational fears that are a little bit common, all things considered. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea of fears and something being associated with specific fears. In fact, the word fears uh, brings to mind not quite a deity, but an entity or some sort of force that can loosely influence the world in very minor ways. Um, with a 19, you might have heard of these entities as the 14 fears, but as you're looking over the board, there are 15 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah. The and it's not so much something you can necessarily escape because everyone is a little bit afraid of something, even if they don't believe they are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there are, I guess you could say, either creatures or entities or quote unquote people who are influenced by the fears or those who have come into direct contact that have been marked by them by in some way. There are hmm,
There's the mention of avatars on here.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With a 19, tempted to give you something with that.
Hmm.
Because the biggest, most recent quote unquote event regarding the fears was an explosion that happened at a building in Albinon.
Hmm.
Except it's not accurate to call it an explosion. The building went completely missing. And when it came back,
Hmm.
it was reduced to rubble.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, considering Albanon is the no magic place, they
Mm-hmm.
probably would just interpret it as the building blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. um,
Yep.
um, going further onto the board if you want me to.
These do, yeah. No, and he's definitely taking notes about all of this, as many as he's able to.
Uh, as I look back at my reference. There are several that you notice. You have the titles of each of them going in order are the buried, the corruption, the dark, the desolation, the end, the eye, of course, which you already saw, the flesh, the hunt, the lonely, the slaughter, the spiral, the stranger, the vast, the web, and this one does not have a lot of notes on it. In fact, the one of the notes that you do read on this 15th one specifically is that is in the form of a question. It says recent emergence. The title of this one is called The Extinction.
Interesting. I will say, as a fun little detail, I think his gaze kind of lingers on the entry for the lonely, just a little bit longer than the others.
Right, if you're going to look at that one, the lonely is the fear of isolation, fear of being alone, abandoned, excluded, forgotten, or in some way, shape, or form cut off from the rest of people around you. The fear of knowing that you are truly and utterly alone. And there is a tag right next to it that says something along the lines of association with clouded, misty, foggy areas, and what have you.
Norman internally, well, good thing none of that applies to me because I'm perfectly content being alone.
There are some notes, I guess you could say, in the margins of all this, like, this blackboard, that says something along the lines of, how these fears, need a way to feed, and that unfortunately means to causing fear.
And it all comes together. As yeah, he was definitely feeling pretty scared when that happened just now.
Yeah.
When he felt the eye staring down on him, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, there is an eye motif directly above your head.
Yep. He just kind of like hisses under his breath, like, and fucking tastic. So his patron made a snack out of me.
So fucking sorry.
Don't be. He deserves this. We know this.
We do know he deserves it. What else can I give you from the blackboard? There was a couple of notes on how on avatars and a type of category of people called marked. If you want to look that over.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
Okay. Avatars. These are people who are people or entities that in some way, shape, or form, and this is in quotes, serve the fears they are associated with. There's a couple of notes here about apparently servitude does not have to be willing.
Interesting. Yeah, he's definitely going to make a note of that.
um, there's also notes that um, avatars can be creatures that are directly created by the fears in some way, or
Mm-hmm.
pre-existing people in the material plane that have come to be favored by the fears, and as a result slowly lose their, I guess you could say, humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the marked, however, are
Real quick,
individual.
he has a little remark about that. He kind of mutters like, "So either their servants or their favorite little playthings."
Little toys.
Yep.
Um, there is a there is a note on the marked, which are straight up people who have come into contact with quote unquote paranormal slash supernatural events associated with the fears directly.
Mm-hmm.
This could be their influence, their avatars, uh, direct repeated contact with phobias that would be associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a note here that says that a person can be marked by more than one fear. All that fun stuff.
Eee. Of course, I think the thought crosses his head, like, I wonder what happens if somebody gets marked by all 15 fears. And that's none of my business. Immediately discarded.
That's a joke for nobody else. Oh my gosh.
That's none of my business. Anyway.
But that's all you can get from the board specifically. Um,
Yeah.
Tom still has not come back yet. You do have time to
Mhm.
poke around through some statements if you want to.
Yeah, I think he'll do just that. I mean, he didn't come here for that at all. As much as he does kind of want to get away from Tom now, he doesn't want to leave here empty-handed. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I don't know. So I don't know if you have a particular statement prepared for him to find, or if I could pick one or whatever
I
works for you.
pulled one up. I pulled up a transcript just
I
for
am good
this.
with that. Yeah.
It is unfortunately a little longer than uh, Boy's Midnight Journey. Uh, but
It's all good.
hmm?
I am very much happy to listen to story time with you.
um, this I'm not gonna XP name any of these because they're like one-off characters from the Magnus archives.
E.
But you find a I guess as you're going through, you come across you've somehow wandered to the side of the room that is denoted by the symbol of the stranger.
Ooh.
Which from the blackboards you know to be the fear of the uncanny and the unfamiliar, things that are not quite right, things that you can't completely understand or know, of people who aren't quite people, of things that are not quite what they should be, stuff like that. Um, for instance, mannequins seem to be a common motif with the stranger.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
He will take a look at that one.
All right.
I'm guessing it's probably also a recording, so.
It is, yes, this statement was originally written down.
Mm.
There's like a little notation with the little cassette giving like when this statement was given, which was about 12 years ago, give or take. Almost. Actually, I think it'll be almost 13 now. In God.
Albanon, I'm guessing?
Yeah,
or?
in Albanon. The capital of Albanon, which I forgot the name of.
Smochester, I believe you named it.
Smochester?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the name of this archival institute is different from the name of the building that you are in now.
Interesting.
You press play on this recording and you hear Tom Symms' voice. And I'm not sure how to put it, but he sounds a lot different than how he sounds now. Something about his voice gives the impression of a very pretentious academic type. And he is essentially giving a foreword before the actual statement proper, talking about how he inherited the role of the head archivist, and he makes mention that the state of the archives is abysmal, and he thinks it might have something to do with the previous head archivist, who died recently.
Fun.
Yeah, and he does not regard her in the highest opinion because of her apparent lack of I guess you could say professionalism when it came to her fucking job, because the archives was in a state of disarray. Nothing was organized. So
Norman nodding in agreement. Yeah, that's entirely fair.
Yeah. And he lists a couple of names that are assisting him with the process of organizing everything, one of which is Marvin's. Hilariously, when he says Marvin's name, it's with the sense that, like, he doesn't quite like Marvin. And, but eventually he does you hear Tom Symms' voice give the same introduction to the statement that he did for yours. But when he says his name and title, like his job title, instead of saying just the archivist, he calls himself the head archivist of the institute he had been working at.
Interesting.
And I can read this out loud for you. This all happened a couple of years ago, so I apologize if some of the details are a bit off. I mean, I feel I remember it clearly, but sometimes things are so weird that you start to doubt yourself. Still, I suppose weird is kind of what you guys do, right? So, I'm studying at the university. Biochemistry, specifically, and I was in my second year at the time when this happened. I wasn't in any sort of university accommodation at this point and was renting a student flat down in Southside with a few other second years. To be honest, I didn't hang out with them much. I took a gap year before matriculating, and my birthday's in the wrong part of September, so I was nearly two years older than most of my peers when I started my course. I got on with them fine, you understand, but I tended to end up hanging out with some of the older students. That's why I was at the party in the first place. Michael McAuley, a good friend of mine, had just been accepted to do a master's degree in earth sciences, so we decided the celebration was in order. Well, maybe party isn't quite the right word. We just kind of invaded the almanac down on the Royal Mile and drank long enough and loud enough that eventually we had the back area to ourselves. Now, I don't know how well you know the drinking holes in that area, but the almanac has a wide selection of some excellent single malts, and I may have slightly overindulged. I have vague memories of Mike suggesting I slow down, to which I responded by roundly swearing at him for failing to properly celebrate his own good news. Or words to that effect. Long story short, I was violently ill around midnight and made the decision to walk the route home. It wasn't far to my flat, maybe half an hour if I'd been sober, and the night was cool enough that I remember having a hope the chill would perk me up some. I headed for the Cowgate, and the quickest way to get there from the Royal Mile is down Old Fish Market Close. Now, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that there are some steep hills in the area, but Old Fish Market Close is exceptional, even by those standards. At times, it must reach the 30 or 40 degree angle, which is hard enough to navigate when you don't have that much scotch inside you. As I have mentioned, I had quite a lot, so it probably wasn't that surprising when I took a rather nasty tumble about halfway down the street. In retrospect, the fall wasn't that bad compared to what it could have been, but at the time, it really shook me up and left me with some nasty bruises. I picked myself up as best I could, checked I hadn't seriously injured myself, no broken bones or anything, and decided to roll a cigarette to calm myself. That's when I heard it. Can I have a cigarette? I was startled out of my thoughts by the words as I thought I had been alone. Quickly trying to compose myself and looking around, I noticed a small alleyway on the opposite side of the street. It was very narrow and completely unlit with a short staircase leading up. I could see a light fixture a little way up the wall at its entrance, but it either wasn't working or wasn't turned on, meaning that beyond a few steps the alleyway was shrouded in total darkness. I stood there a couple of stairs from the street. It was a figure. It was hard to tell much about them as they were mostly in shadows, though if I had to guess, I would have said the voice sounded male. They seemed to sway, ever so slightly as I watched, and I assumed that they, like me, were probably a little drunk. I lit my own cigarette and held out my tobacco towards them, though I didn't approach and asked if they were okay with a roll-up. The figure didn't move except to continue that gentle swaying. Writing it down now, it seemed so obvious that something was wrong. If I hadn't been so drunk, maybe I would have noticed quicker, but even when the stranger asked the question again, "Can I have a cigarette?" utterly without intonation, still I didn't understand why I was so uneasy. I stared at the stranger as my eyes began to adjust and I could make out more details. I could see that their face appeared blank, expressionless, and their skin seemed damp and slightly sunken, like they had a bad fever. The swaying was more pronounced now, seeming to move from the waist, side to side, back and forth. By this point, I had finished rolling a second cigarette and gingerly held it out towards them, but I didn't get any closer. I had decided that if this weirdo wanted a cigarette, they were going to need to come out of the creepy hallway. They didn't come closer, didn't make any movement at all, except for that damn swaying. For some reason, the thought of an anglerfish popped into my head. A single point of light dangled into the darkness, hiding the thing that lures you in. "Can I have a cigarette?" It spoke again in the same flat voice, and I realized exactly what was wrong. Its mouth was closed, had been the whole time. Whatever was repeating that question, it wasn't the figure in the alleyway. I looked at their feet and saw that they weren't quite touching the ground. The stranger's form was being lifted ever so slightly and moved gently from side to side. I dropped the cigarette and grabbed for a torch, trying to see. And I don't know why I didn't run or what I hoped to see in that alley, but I wanted to get a better look. As soon as I took out my phone, shoot, that's not right. As soon as I lit the torch, the figure disappeared. It sort of folded at the waist and vanished back into the darkness, as if a string had gone taut and pulled it back. I turned on the torch and stared into the alley, but I saw nothing, just silence and darkness. I staggered back up to the Royal Mile, which still had lights and people, and found a carriage to take me home. I slept late that next day. I made sure I didn't have any lectures or classes, as I had intended to be sleeping off a heavy night of drinking, which I guess I was, although it was bizarre, and it was that bizarre encounter that kept playing in my head. So after making my way through 2 liters of water, some painkillers, and a very greasy breakfast, I felt human enough to leave my flat and go to investigate the place in daylight. The result was unenlightening. There were no marks, no bloodstains, nothing to indicate that the swaying figure had ever been there at all. The only thing I did find was an unsmoked cigarette lying just below the burned-out light fixture. Beyond that, I didn't really know what to do. I did as much research as I could on the place, but couldn't find anyone who had any similar experience to mine. There didn't seem to be any folklore or urban legends I could find out about old fish market clothes. The few friends I told about what happened just assumed I'd been accosted by some stranger, and the alcohol had made it seem much weirder than it was. I tried to explain that I never had hallucinations while drunk, and that there was no way this guy had just been a normal person, but they always gave me one of those looks, halfway between pity and concern, and I'd shut up. Never did find out anything else about it, but a few days later I saw some missing person appeals go up around campus. Another student had disappeared. John Fellows, his name was, though I didn't really know the guy and couldn't tell you much about him, except for 2 things that struck me as very important. He had been at the same party, and as far as I remembered, had still been there when I left. The other was just that, well, gosh, what's a good replacement for photo? On the drawing they'd used for his missing persons appeal, couldn't help but notice that there was a pack of cigarettes poking out of his pocket. I haven't quit smoking, but I do find that I take a lot more taxis now if I find myself out too late. Statement ends.
I think Norman is definitely very intrigued by the concept of, like, you know, an anglerfish, but it's a person in an alleyway. Like, he's definitely gotten some ideas for this, like possible stories he could tell with this, and he's written down a few notes on that. He Do you think at this point, Tom might finally come back? Actually, before he comes back, since it's been a little while, I think Norman might like go to the door and see if he can, like, you know, hear anything. Like,
Do you want to roll another
you know, if,
perception?
if Tom. Yeah, let's see how this turns out. That's an 8.
What's your
Man.
passive? Your passive would be a 14, would it?
That pass would be much better. That's a 14, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you find your way back to the... Sorry, my throat is full of phlegm. I'm sorry.
It's all good. You've been reading for a while. Need to take a drink of water or something.
Yeah. Okay. Um, if you find yourself back at the doors and you crack it open and you try to listen for anything, um, you do hear a conversation between Tom and Marvin. Marvin sounds genuinely concerned, and Tom sounds frustrated. I'm not gonna go do a whole conversation between the two of them, but I will give you the bits that you can catch.
Yeah, it's all good.
That Marvin is trying to tell Tom that it's not his fault. Um, uh, how should I put it? It's not his fault, and he shouldn't be too upset by it because it's not his fault. But um, Tom does counters by saying that they invited Norman in. The least they could do is provide some safety while he is here, and he couldn't even do that.
Oh, buddy. Tragically, Norman is a heck of a lot less sympathetic about him than I am, though.
Yeah. There is.
So I think kind of
Mhm.
Norman kind of internally scoffs and is like, "So he knew this might happen, and yet still let me in, idiot." This is all in his head, by the way. He doesn't say it aloud.
And he actually says something along the lines. Actually, Marvin says something along the lines of, "There's no way you could have known. This hasn't happened for months."
Hmm.
And Tom, after a moment of what you assume is trying to calm himself down, um, says that he is still going to go up there to apologize.
In that case, Norman's gonna move away from the door and go back to whichever shelf he was nearby.
Yep. There's a brief moment where you can hear the footsteps coming back up. Ooh, excuse me. Uh, as the door opens. Sorry, I just looked over. I was flipping through channels real quick just to clear out some notifications, and I just saw something absolutely hysterical in the Bash General chat. Anyway,
You can tell me later.
yeah. Um. Uh. Um.
Yeah, Tom comes in.
Tom comes in, and he sees that you're over by the shelf, and he clears his throat and he says, "Did you find something?"
Yes, rather fascinating story. The sort of anglerfish-esque creature hiding in an alleyway. Should give me more than enough inspiration, I'd say.
I hope it suffices. I also hope you
Mm.
haven't grown too tired of my own voice.
Mm.
Um, as you turn to look at him, by the way, he is holding out a glass of water to you.
Um, I'll take it, if only to be polite. I'd take a sip, but probably not drinking much of it.
Um, and as you do this, he just kind of, there's a brief moment that is incredibly awkward.
Hmm. I
Just,
think Norman's kind of like giving him a look like he's expecting them to kind of say something, like sort
uh,
of waiting for him to talk, basically.
yeah, you see him kind of like flex and clench his hands into fists, in and out, before he just kind of clears his throat, and says, I should apologize, for any, discomfort you might have felt while in this building.
Norman just kind of nods at him, like, I suppose if you had a little control over it, there's not much to be done. Still, a warning would have been appreciated.
Oh, it's incredibly stupid of me. I know.
Mm.
I haven't had anything like that happen for some time, and misjudged. He kind of rubs a hand against his face. Misjudged the difference. In any case, I can understand if you prefer to leave soon.
Mm. I would, though, if you'll allow me, I would like to confirm a few things.
He his brows raise and he kind of straightens and he looks at you.
Mhm. Well, first off, whatever your patron took from me, did you hear any of it as well?
You see him kind of pause for a second. Um, and he says, unfortunately, we are kind of tied to each other. And he looks incredibly uncomfortable as he says that, but there was a moment where you said something and I couldn't quite make out what it was.
Mm. Well, if you didn't hear it clearly, then I'd prefer to keep it that way.
Understandable.
Right. I won't explain myself, mostly because, well, I don't want you to hear any more than I prefer, but all I'll say is that can't control whatever that thing was, the eye, from taking secrets from me. At the very least, can I ask you not to share them with anyone else? You must understand that, well, I might be in danger if certain pieces of information were to get out. Again, I'm not entirely sure how much you heard, but well, I prefer to err on the side of caution.
Nothing in these walls will leave it. I can.
Insight, because he doesn't trust this guy. I'm sorry, Tom. My boy is just very sus. Aw, that's a 6.
Looks away. Do you want to try Alvarez? See if Alvarez is nicer again.
Yeah, let's see. God. One of these days he'll get decent rolls. What's a 10? Not terrible.
He actually looks incredibly serious when he says that. Like, on
All
top of
right.
everything else, whatever happens in this building under his watch,
Mhm.
joke, um,
Mhm.
whatever happens under his watch, he is very serious about keeping it safe and keeping it
Mhm.
away from, say, uh, any individuals that might use it for harm.
Mhm.
In
Indeed.
that's a 10.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can give you that. All right.
It's okay. It's only a 10, so I think Norman will just kind of nod and says, "Well, either way, I suppose I don't really have much of a choice but to trust you with that." And yeah, Tom will definitely kind of might recall that similar sentiments were kind of in the main character of the story he read, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if it weren't already obvious enough from whatever he learned from that reading him, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom just feels so bad, man. This is unfortunately in character for me.
Yeah.
um, but yeah. He kind of, I guess you could say he kind of, uh, Norman had been taking notes
From the board, yeah.
from the board, and he says, Every bit of information kept here is in an effort to keep those entities as far away as possible, as much as we can.
He nods and he'll say, well, just to confirm then, if I do write about something based on that statement, it won't have a similar effect to people learning about the memory worm, will it?
Nope. That one in particular is the stranger, not anything related to the mind.
Good to know. At least the strip out here wasn't a complete wash then.
Even if you did find something, you didn't find that one pleasurable enough, I'm sure one of our many myriad of stories, and he kind of says that over dramatically, and he's looking directly up at the little eye that's on the dome ceiling.
Yeah.
Myriad of stories might suit you better.
Yeah. Norman can't help but like legitimately smile a little bit, like genuinely smile at that, because goodness knows he knows a whole lot about being exasperated with one's patron or whatever the eye is to Tom.
Well, see, Tom, unfortunately, and Norman has no way of knowing this, is the eye's specialist little boy.
Yeah.
And I think as you guys are discussing, as a little bit of a silly, you hear a soft.
Aw. Norman will look in the direction of that meow.
There is a little kitty sitting at one of these shelves.
Huh? Kind of like glances over and then glances back to Tom. Is that yours?
Oh, yes, this is First Mate. He actually belongs to a friend of mine, but he's been quite the admirable co-worker.
Oh, I suppose in some cases animals are quite a bit easier to get along with than people. I've never really had much luck with them though, personally.
And Tom just kind of nods and like reaches over to give First Mate a little bit of scritchies under the chin.
He, yeah. Sadly, Norman's not gonna go for pets, mostly because he's worried that 'cause I like to think that like a lot of animals kind of pick up on the rancid vibes from this kid and don't like him too much. I mean, there was the incident with that goat a while back, but
Oops.
yep.
But yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you want to like roll something for First Mate if see if he gets like how he feels about Norman, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll roll something. I don't have any stats open for him,
E.
but okay. That's a flat 11. This cat is kind of just staring intently at Norman.
Yeah. Well, he's not hissing or scratching, so he'll take that as a win.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I got for here at the Institute. Do you have anything else you want?
So I think that's about it. Unless, of course, like, Tom wants to ask about any of the other oddities that popped up during that statement. But, I mean, you can probably tell that Norman's probably not is pretty reluctant to divulge any more information. But then on the other hand, apparently the eye, like, might have taken quite a bit, so.
Yeah, no, I think at the very least, because this is the first time in a while that something like this has happened, out of character, Tom is a little afraid that if he just asks a question, it will compel the answer rather than be...
Right.
Yeah.
Might start another statement or something.
Yeah.
Probably for the best then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As as
Yeah.
Norman's coming down from the archives, though, I bet Marvin will just be like, "Oh, did you find everything you need? Do you want some biscuits for the road? Whatever." Whatever
I think
else.
Norman will politely decline. But yeah, thanks him for his hospitality.
Yeah. Alright. And that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for playing with me, Kit.
Yeah, that was very fun. Enjoyed that.
Yes, and thank you to our listening audience. Nobody joined in the present, but in the future. For now, we are going to bid you all a good time zone. Bye!
Hi, everybody.